due to availability. This program was recorded. This is Don Pardo.
The Allis-Chalmers workers are trying to save their jobs. Ford will recall about 35,000 auto workers, and it's a soggy Sunday night in Pittsburgh. I'm Eleanor Shano. Newswatch is next.
A school volunteer in Pittsburgh Public Schools is a vital link between community and school. Phone 371-5080 for a free brochure.
I'm Ray Mansell of Pittsburgh Steelers. How do you become a special kind of center? First, you learn your job, then everybody else's. And how can you become someone special? Get your high school diploma, then join the Navy. If you measure up, the Navy offers over 70 job skills, from jet engines to boiler technology. And like football, each job makes the Navy team go. There are no easy jobs, but there are a lot of solid, satisfying ones. You may work on a one-man job or lead the play for a dozen other guys, and you'll get your share of chores, too. Have you got what it takes? Then be someone special. Join the Navy. It's a good job, a good life, and the kind of great team you can be proud to be part of.
To find out how you can become someone special, call 644-5894. That's 644-5894.
In Pittsburgh, this is Channel 11, the news station.
Good evening, everyone. This is Sunday, February 23rd. In the news, we have more tonight on that controversy over air control safety at Greater Pitt. And the mayor's brother may run for county commissioner. We'll have details on those stories a bit later, but the top news at this hour concerns some 600 workers from the Allis-Chalmers plant who attended an emergency meeting today. The company has announced that it will be shutting down the plant. Nearly 1,000 workers will be out of jobs. The employees met today in an effort to find a way out of that situation.
It fell smoothly last week with Board Chairman David Scott's announcement that Allis-Chalmers will phase out its North Side plant. Since then, city, county, and company officials have been desperately trying to save over 1,000 jobs and keep the industry in Pittsburgh. Al Kress coordinated today's company meeting and summed up his fellow workers' problems.
I have been with the company for 28 years, and my age is not at the point where I can take a retirement. I'm not old enough by far, and I have a lot to lose, like many, many more.
How would you describe the general morale at the plant now?
Well, the morale of the people that I have spoke to, should you say, is an all-time low, because we have much to lose. And as the labor market is today, it's quite a concern.
What are some of the ideas you think will come out at the meeting that might help?
First of all, there is the thought that we can form a co-op and have a co-op management type operation and keep the Pittsburgh works. Next of all, it has been suggested that we try to get outside companies interested. Now, I have personally have had phone calls at my home of people who own transformer companies and that are looking for expansion, and they are interested in the Pittsburgh works.
Talk at today's meeting focused on whether or not to drop out of UAW Local 1036 and take some cuts in benefits. But most of the workers I talked to said they would like to find another solution. This is Vicki Rogal, Channel 11 Newswatch.
The workers will be back on the job tomorrow. Kress said the first layoffs will come in about 2 weeks, and he says so far there has been no word of job placement help that had been promised by the company. Well, here's some good labor news. The Ford Motor Company says it will begin recalling some workers from indefinite layoffs next month. Ford says it will build 150,000 cars in March compared to 100,000 it's building this month. The March output will still be 21% below March of a year ago. The recall will affect about 35,000 of the 177,000 Ford workers who are on open-ended layoffs because of the sales slump.
I dip it once a week.
I dip it once a week.
I dip it once a week.
Dip It's the coffee pot distainer you should use once a week to keep stale oils from building up in the stem and spout and on the wall of your coffee pot.
Pittsburgh, the news station.
Good evening, everyone. In the news, there was a wild police chase in East Liberty today, and in Connecticut, an explosion has destroyed a rubber factory. More on that a bit later, but the top news story at this hour concerns a bizarre shooting spree. A man armed with a high-powered rifle killed 4 persons, wounded 3 others, in a motel and trailer court in the small Northern California community of Smith River. The man first opened fire in the parking lot. He then entered the motel lobby and started shooting. Oregon State Police are now reported to be holding a suspect. He has not been identified. However, police said he was driving a car with Ohio license plates. Closer to home, 2 men were found shot to death this afternoon in a home in Newcastle. Warrants have been issued for a Newcastle man in connection with those shootings. The bodies of 35-year-old Franklin Moyer of Newcastle and 42-year-old Thomas Borders of Farrell were found following a car from neighbors who heard the shots. Moyer was found in the front yard of the home. Borders was found in the kitchen. Neighbors told police they saw 34-year-old Russell Lane of Newcastle enter that house just before the shooting. Authorities have been alerted in Pittsburgh and Allentown, as well as Washington, D.C., where Lane has relatives. Well, a police chase here in Pittsburgh ended in an accident and the arrest of 2 robbery suspects. The men, identified as Raymond Jones and Lucius Davenport, both of Pittsburgh, were wanted in connection with the robbery of the Kentucky Fried Chicken store at Center and Negley. 2 shots were fired at the manager of that store during the holdup. Detectives spotted a car matching the one used in the robbery. They then gave chase. The chase ended when the car hit several other vehicles, flipped over, and landed on 2 other cars. Jones and Davenport were taken to Mercy Hospital. Their injuries are not believed to be serious. Police said Davenport was also wanted on a murder warrant, but they would not give details.
May I have your attention, please, my friends, for more good news from Kaufman's. It's Kaufman's big auditorium sale, 4 days only, March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. An auditorium sale on Mrs. Coates from Adoria, Babette, and the Fur Salon. Save 33 to 66%. It's a really big sale, almost 3,000 coats. Fur trims, untrimmed, short coats too. Fake furs, real furs, leathers, and suedes. The best labeled coats. The auditorium sale on Mrs. Coates at Kaufman's store downtown, March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. Don't miss it.
Attention all units. Hold up in progress at Boone & Peller. Subject fleeing.
Police radio is on the air, in action around the clock. The busiest and most exciting radio network in town. And you can be a part of all of it, right in your own home, automatically.
We're in pursuit, moving west.
Get in on the action now with the exciting Regency Monitor Radio Scanner.
There's a Regency model for every purpose, every purse at Watts Electrical Washington, Hi-Fi Center McKeesport, Souls Stores, Aliquippa.
A 4-alarm house fire kept several Ross Township fire companies busy today.
A fire broke out in this home in North Hills shortly before noon, keeping firefighters busy for about 2 hours before bringing it under control. The 2-story house located at 130 Kensal Avenue in Berkeley Hills was gutted by flames. Fire officials at the scene said the blaze appeared to have been sparked by some electrical malfunction on the 2nd floor, then spreading throughout the house. Every available fire and rescue unit in Ross Township responded to the 4-alarm. Luckily, no one was injured. Several firefighters, however, were overcome by dense smoke, and this fire proved to be an elusive enemy. Fire units were still responding after an all-clear developed into a second fire that spread from burning timbers in the roof. No estimate of damages was available. A Berkeley Hills neighbor said the owner had recently completed redecorating the house. Meredith Lewis, Channel 11 News Watch in Berkeley Hills.
Now, 2 Ross Township firemen were treated at Passavant Hospital for smoke inhalation. Last night in Shelton, Connecticut, 3 men forced their way into a rubber factory, kidnapped 3 guards on duty, and left. Police say the men returned 30 minutes later and set off a series of explosions that completely destroyed that plant.
3 explosions a half hour before midnight. Then fire broke out at the factory of the Sponge Rubber Products Company in Shelton, Connecticut. Flames burned out of control through the 4-story brick building, 2.5 blocks long. The local fire department called for help, and 24 companies came from 20 nearby towns, as far as 25 miles away. It took more than 300 men and 50 fire trucks to bring the fire under control. 6 firemen were hurt. At midday today, firemen were still hosing down the embers. It was obvious that the building had been totally destroyed, and city officials estimated the loss at no less than $10 million.
Now, the 3 kidnapped guards were released unharmed. Authorities have refused to speculate on the motives for that attack. Back in this area, 700 miners in the Indiana County have voted to honor a court order and return to their jobs at the Florence Mining Company mines. The miners walked off the job when the United Mine Workers Union ordered 2 locals to merge. Both locals were working the same seam of coal from different mine shafts. Now, the workers say a merger of the 2 locals would affect their seniority and their job security. A federal court judge ordered the miners back to work, and the matter was submitted for binding arbitration. Some 150 members of the Service Employees Union have voted to strike Moon Township schools tomorrow. School will be open, but there will be no cafeteria service, so students will have to take their lunches. Well, if you're going out tonight, better take something or somebody cuddly with you. It is cold, it is snowing, and driving is not too easy. What's happening, Ken?
It's a little slick, isn't it? The roads are kind of plastered down with that snow. Do you remember the first night I was here and we had the heavy snow?
I sure do.
And you said to me, this probably will start another winter when we'll have a snowstorm every Sunday. Do you remember?
I was right.
You sure were. It's been with us every weekend. 1897, we had a cold time of it, but more winter is here, and I want to show you just about what's on radar. At least we'll take a look and see if anything is left up there on radar now, because it is starting to disappear. Yeah, here's some stuff scattered down to the south. Goes from, there's some around Johnstown, that's probably the heaviest, around Morgantown, and then it stretches all the way to the southwest of us, all the way up to Cleveland, although a lot of it just isn't registering. It's getting into the very light scale, and a lot of it is dropping off. It's becoming quite widely scattered now. So maybe the worst is over. Officially, we've had very little, under 1/4 inch of snow, but many areas around here have reported much, much more. Now, 1897, if we look for a warm reading, was 68, and in 1962 we were 6 degrees, our coldest for this date. We were above zero on that date. We made it to 27 for a high today. The overnight low was 19. That makes us 10 degrees colder than normal. So let's go outside with the film crew and see how things look today. Yeah, under 1/4 inch they report officially, but we have had more than that. For many, many areas anyway. Those who have been shoveling or sliding in this stuff are well aware of it. Our present temperature is 23 degrees. Relative humidity is 68%. The barometer is rising, and wind is from the northwest at 15 miles an hour. And skiers are probably just as excited as they can be, because we'll have on and off flurries the next couple of days. In fact, it shouldn't even warm up much above freezing until about Wednesday or Thursday. And even then, we'll still be running 5 degrees or so colder than normal. There's a big high-pressure center up here around Lake Winnipeg, and there's a low-pressure area that has moved off the coast now. We're interested in those because they're contributing to this strong flow of very cold air that's coming down from the north and will continue for a couple more days. And this cold air coming across the lakes becomes very unstable. When it gets down over the land areas, that instability comes out in the form of either showers or snow. And with our temperature expected to be well below freezing tomorrow, you know it's going to be in the flurries category. And until this thing moves on by, we'll continue with our snow flurries through probably early Wednesday at the very earliest, before we can expect it to clear up. We have the warm air on this side of the front, colder air in here. You can expect a hard freeze all the way down through central Georgia into the Carolinas. Miami is forecasting a low tonight of 58, and there'll be some showers and thunderstorms as the front goes down through there. That just isn't warm enough to be that far down. Bemidji, Minnesota came in with a reading of 3 below zero for a cold temperature. McAllen, Texas at 87 for the highest in the country today. Now, Cleveland's at 25, is at 21 in Youngstown, Wheeling's 22, 21 in Morgantown, 19 in Johnstown, Altoona, Phillipsburg, 18 in Bradford, a 22 reported in Erie. Hazelwood 1 is in the poor air category with a very high count, 110, and other areas are ranging down into the satisfactory range. Tomorrow will be mainly cold with flurries continuing. Tuesday, the skies will clear ever so briefly, but they'll try for a while to get better, and then the flurries and clouds will move back in on Wednesday. However, by Thursday, things should be looking better with some sunshine. Friday, there'll be some sun around. It'll start to get a little bit milder at that time. Not summer-like, but a little milder. Cold the next few days. Flurries lasting right on and off through Monday night. Our low tonight down to about 18. Our high tomorrow, 28. It'll still be cold tomorrow night with about 17 degrees. And I hope your forecast of snow every Sunday is just about through.
Could I make a request? From now on, could we eliminate Miami from the weather report? You know, the people down there, they know how nice it is, and the rest of us would rather forget about it. While you were doing the weather report, I sat here with my calculator. This is the 2nd of March. Spring is the 21st. That means 19 days and counting. Took me 2.5 minutes to figure that out. Well, the word from Washington tonight is that President Ford will probably accept a compromise energy plan and suspend the last $2 of his controversial oil import tax. Republican Senator William Roth of Delaware says the White House has notified him that his proposal to delay the additional $2 in taxes will probably be accepted. An announcement on whether or not the president will accept a compromise energy plan is expected tomorrow after Mr. Ford meets with the congressional leadership. We'll check more late news and have a full sports report coming up in the next segment of Newswatch.
These days it isn't easy to get enough beef for your money. But there's one place where they really pile on the roast beef, Arby's. You don't have to take a couple of bites of bread to get to the beef.
We really pile on the beef at Arby's.
Beef, Arby's piles.
Collect your set of cartoon glasses now at Arby's.
Hey, put it in there, babe. What are you saying, babe? Hey, now you're cooking, babe. Make it sound about it, babe. Make it sound, babe.
Hello. It's that time of year. What you saw there was a spring training pitch. Now I'd like to make a pitch for Horn's Spring Sale. It's going on right now. Horn's has it for you. Great savings on spring clothing, home furnishings, accessories, appliances, housewares. Get to a Horn's near you soon and save.
Okay, get him home, babe. Get him home. Get him home. What do you say, babe? Huh?
Down here, babe.
Congressional delegation touring Southeast Asia met today in Saigon with representatives of the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese. It was a stormy session, and 2 members of the congressional delegation opposed to more American aid for South Vietnam say now they may change their minds.
The congressman first wanted to know if the North Vietnamese would help locate American servicemen missing in action. The North Vietnamese military spokesman said such help would only be forthcoming if the United States stopped supporting the Thieu government. Some of the congressmen did not like that response at all.
I don't think it would be possible to proceed with other questions. May we have the answer to question number 1?
We have a term in Oklahoma that I think covers your answer, and it's hogwash.
From what I have seen since I've been here and what I've heard today, and I came to this meeting with the objectivity about which I've just spoken, I want to say to you in all candor that I don't believe you people ever intended in the first instance to abide by the agreement which was made in Paris.
The visit to Vietnam and Cambodia has apparently worked in the administration's favor. Congressman Paul McCluskey of California came here a week ago, almost sure he'd vote against more aid. Now he says he's not sure. An even more striking change of mind came from Millicent Fenwick, the pipe-smoking congresswoman from New Jersey. Ms. Fenwick was elected on a no aid for Indochina platform. She now says she's seen enough to reconsider her whole outlook on Indochina.
Meanwhile, the civilian population of Phnom Penh is slowly starving to death. The besieged Cambodian capital has been receiving U.S. food airlift supplies, but the Lon Nol government has earmarked all that food for the military. Now, social workers in Cambodia say that even the refugees are denied food, and the famine death toll is rising sharply. The Stowe Rock School Board will meet Wednesday evening to decide what action, if any, they will take in the case of Superintendent Max Homer. Homer was indicted on extortion, perjury, obstruction of justice, and income tax fraud by a federal grand jury last week. Homer says he is not guilty and doesn't plan to resign as the school superintendent. Well, in sports, Bob Murphy is $52,000 richer tonight. And Dee, I heard the second period of the hockey game. Penn scored, what, four goals? I trust they won.
Yes, they're winning by football scores now. 7-3 over Vancouver, 8-6 over New
York.
York.
Four goals in every period, it's going to turn out that way.
That's right. And tonight it was Vic Hadfield who poured it on his former teammates. Vic, a former Ranger captain, scored 2 goals and added an assist in leading the Pens to an 8-2 win in New York. Hadfield snapped a 6-6 tie with 9:19 left when he fired a 25-footer in the goal from the left face-off circle. Jean Pronovost also had 2 goals and assists, and former Penguin Greg Polis had a hat trick for the Rangers. Ron Schock, who had gone 18 games without scoring, got his 20th goal tonight. That gives the Pens 9 players with 20 or more goals, an expansion club record. The Pens' 257 goals for the season is also a record. In other National Hockey League action this afternoon, Boston whipped Chicago 3-2. Buffalo tied the New York Islanders 3-3. Philadelphia beat St. Louis 4-2. Atlanta blanked Kansas City 4-0. Vancouver's leading Washington 3-1 in the second period, and Toronto beat Detroit 5-4. Chubby Bobby Murphy used several clutch birdies in the final round to shoot a 4-under par 68 and win the Jackie Gleason Golf Classic in Lauderhill, Florida today. The closing round gave Murphy a 72-hole score of 273, 15 under par, and a fat $52,000 paycheck. Jack Nicklaus blew a 3-stroke lead and finished third at 275. Arnold Palmer's hopes for his first victory in 2 years faded in the final round when he shot a 74 and finished in a tie for 7th at 279. Detroit used slowdown tactics to stymie Duquesne's running game and walked off with a 60-45 win this afternoon at the Civic Arena. The loss dropped the Dukes' record to 14-10, but they still have life in the ECAC playoffs. The committee announced shortly after the game that Pitt, Georgetown, George Washington would definitely be in the playoffs, but Duquesne would have to win at Cincinnati Tuesday to get the 4th berth. If the Dukes lose, West Virginia 13-12 will get the bid. I asked Duquesne coach John Sinicola if the WVU game Saturday night might have taken some incentive from his players today.
No, I don't know. I don't know what they thought really because that occurred after practice, and I know prior to practice they knew that this game meant a lot to us, and that's why I think we were a little bit tight. If anything, it maybe should have relaxed us, but yet, you know, people like yourself are asking, what about your chances? You know, here we are with two less losses in West Virginia, and people are still asking us, and they're the closest team to us if you're picking the first 4. So you're asking, you know, and maybe the kids are saying the same thing, you know. So therefore, I don't know if the game helped them. It might have hurt them. I think in their own mind they felt that they had a win today.
Pitt officials announced tonight that their 3,500 tickets for the ECAC playoffs this Friday and Saturday will go on sale at the Pitt ticket office from noon to 8 o'clock tomorrow and 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Tuesday and Wednesday. There will be tickets available at the WVU Coliseum, the site of the game, all week. And finally, Joe Frazier scored a technical knockout over Jimmy Ellis in Melbourne, Australia today and proclaimed he's ready to meet heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali for the 3rd time. Frazier unleashed a vicious attack against Ellis, pounding him at will from the 4th round until the 9th when Ellis's manager threw in the towel.
Okay, Dee, thank you. We'll check more late developments and have our report on women in the news right after this timeout.
What looks like Alka-Seltzer, plus relieves your cold symptoms? What dissolves like Alka-Seltzer, plus has a decongestant to help you breathe? What has specially buffered aspirin, like Alka-Seltzer, plus has an antihistamine to help clear up your runny nose? And what goes to work fast, like Alka-Seltzer, plus has a refreshing lemony taste? What is it? Alka-Seltzer Plus.
Alka-Seltzer Plus cold tablets, fast relief for your cold.
The Dallas-Fort Worth Airport is the largest in the world, and we put a fence around it. I'm Gib Payne of U.S. Steel Supply, and this is our cyclone fence. It's high-quality steel wire, woven and galvanized. We set the posts and lined them up to the contour of the land. We stretched the chain link to just the right tension, banded it, and tied the braces. 50 miles of quality workmanship. That's productivity. At United States Steel, we're involved.
While student enrollment at many of the nation's colleges and universities has been down since the beginning of the decade, a University of Pittsburgh report says enrollment in black colleges is up.
The United Negro College Fund supports about 300,000 students at predominantly black colleges and universities. These are private colleges for the most part, although student enrollment at predominantly black public colleges is up. This according to a study done by Dr. Norman Dixon at the University of Pittsburgh. Dr. Dixon read portions of his report recently at a Pitt seminar about black colleges. He reported, among other things, that about 80% of black college graduates enter graduate school.
The public black colleges particularly have reported an increase in enrollment. I think that there may be 2 or 3 factors accounting for this. One, the forerunners of the recession, the forerunners of the decline in employment, and then third, there's an increasing disenchantment of black students with predominantly white institutions. These institutions, i.e. white, have not shown themselves to be able to deal with the needs of black students. They have sought to change the students instead of changing their institutional posture.
Dr. Dixon believes black colleges will withstand the challenges that integration and tight money represent. The United Negro College Fund says black colleges are growing as fast as they can, but not as fast as they must. Meredith Lewis, Channel 11 News Watch.
Now, Dr. Dixon said that most, if not all, black leaders were graduates of predominantly black colleges. Well, Governor Schaap is the object of a major lobbying campaign to continue giving $12 million in state aid to private colleges. The governor had indicated the program might be dropped because the money was not readily available. The Schaap administration says its first priority is to public institutions. Well, it's time now for our report on women and their status in our society. And with that news, here's Cherry Raymond.
Thank you, Eleanor. Starting off tonight, Congresswoman Barbara Jordan was in Pittsburgh this evening. The Texas Democrat was here to appear at the annual Black Caravan Dinner sponsored by the Grace Memorial Presbyterian Church. In a brief meeting with reporters, Ms. Jordan made it clear that she opposes President Ford's proposed energy program.
The president's plan would be a shock to the economy, so much so that it would yield adverse and negative results.
What kinds of plans do the Democrats propose?
The Democrats have proposed a program of gradualism, economic gradualism. That is, we will conserve fuel, but we will do it by a graduated, stepped increase in the excise tax on new automobiles, with a 5% tax on gasoline, which will go into an energy trust fund, the funds from which will be used for the development of alternative sources of energy. We reject the import tariffs, which the president has imposed, but we do authorize this new energy board, which we create under our proposal to import fuel. That is, to determine whether those imports ought to be limited, to go to allocation, to go to rationing, if the program of gradualism the Democrats have recommended does not work.
Congresswoman Jordan also said that she doesn't think Congress will back down on its opposition to the Ford energy program. And the Equal Rights Amendment is in trouble and has been in trouble for the past few weeks. This week may be the turning point for the ratification of the controversial amendment. 2 more states, Tennessee and Nebraska, voted to rescind their ratification of the amendment, and Idaho is trying to follow suit. The legality of these abolitions has been questioned by ERA supporters, and at present, 6 more states must ratify the amendment before it becomes part of the Constitution. You know, anytime you're having problems, there's usually a cause, and one of the causes for some of the Equal Rights Amendment's problems is a group known as Stop ERA. Phyllis Schafly is the chief opponent of the ERA, and she feels her supporters will win over government interference and big money interests who are trying to buy a constitutional amendment. Mrs. Schafly said that the pro-ERA coalition has established offices in many of the key states and has hired professionals, including a Washington consulting firm, which was paid $249,000. Should my wife work? That's the question many husbands may be asking themselves. According to a consumer researcher, there has been a population explosion in the upper income brackets, and the increase is due mostly to the number of women working in the United States. In almost half of all upper income bracket families, the wife works, and her supplemental paycheck is what puts the family in the higher earning class. And I wouldn't doubt if equal pay helps too. Also in the news, a church trial may be the consequences for a female Episcopalian priest in New York for disobeying her bishop. The Reverend Merle Bittner was told not to perform as a priest in her diocese by the Reverend Robert Spears, Bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of Rochester. The Reverend Bittner celebrated communion before about 350 persons who packed a small inner-city church. The bishop said the church's general convention next year should decide the role of women in the Episcopal priesthood, and a premature decision on his part could cause a harmful backlash of severe proportion. And listen to this, a husband is not required to support his estranged wife. That's a decision that was passed by Judge M.L. Laird in Louisiana. The judge based his decision on a section of the new state constitution which prohibits capricious discrimination according to the sex. Laird said the state criminal code did not require a woman to support her estranged husband, so he ruled the wife support provision unconstitutional. The ruling was handed down in the case of a man who was accused of failing to support his divorced wife. Laird also added that the ruling did not apply to a requirement that the husband pay child support. So if you want to receive alimony, don't go to Louisiana.
Okay, Cherry, thank you. The Public Utility Commission minority member Lewis Carter has issued a report on that agency which questions its priority, and it takes a couple of shots at PUC Chairman George Bloom. Carter says the commission should undertake more in-depth study and planning because it is not responding to utility-related problems. Carter also said George Bloom should stop fighting consumer legislation in Harrisburg and Washington in order to devote more time to state utilities and to other PUC business. PUC member Herb Dennenberg thinks train tickets for rides and also for transportation on the Amtrak and Penn Central train should warn passengers of the danger in using those lines. Dennenberg says he'll submit a formal motion to have the legend, quote, "Traveling or shipping by railroad may be hazardous to your life and property." He would like that printed on the back of every ticket. Dennenberg reached that conclusion after visiting the scene of a train wreck in Lancaster County last week. Pittsburgh should have the same problems that Leonard, Michigan has. Up until January 1st, Leonard had no unemployment problems. They had a 70-year-old constable. They had one traffic light, then a village clerk who was paid $475 a year. Well, then a computer in Washington decided that Leonard needed some help. They needed help in finding jobs for the unemployed, so they sent the town $90,000. They also sent them a lot of headaches. Well, Leonard now has 3 new policemen. They have an assistant village clerk. He is paid $10,000 a year. They have 2 new people to man a new public works office. None of these things the town wanted. And furthermore, the town cannot figure out what all these new people are supposed to do. That's the news for this Sunday, March 2nd. Our next full report of the news at 7:25 tomorrow morning. We'd like to remind you again, just in case you might be driving later tonight, and apparently this situation is going to continue into the early hours tomorrow. We do have snow in Pittsburgh, very cold weather. Driving conditions are a little hazardous, so maybe you better get up a little early tomorrow morning. Our next report of the news, as we said, 7:25 tomorrow morning. And now for Cherry, Dee, and Ken, the entire Newswatch staff, I'm Eleanor Shano. Have a good night.
You have just seen Newswatch, the most complete factual and pictorial television news broadcast available. The next Newswatch at 7:25 tomorrow morning.